Welcome to the I'm a Busy Guy show. My name is Vince Locasio, and I'm a busy guy. And I've got Jerry King Kong, busy guy Korab here today. Thanks for being here, Jerry.
Pleasure to be here, Vince.
Thank you. Former NHL All-Star player. Great to have you here. Maybe we can start off. How did you get that nickname?
Well,
Who gave it to you?
there's a couple of reasons why they call me that, and one's not because of the one the girls think of, but actually was my first game I played in the stadium, the old stadium in Chicago, and we were playing the Boston Bruins. And being a rookie at that time, I was having a problem getting on the ice, so an opportunity knocked that back in those days, usually when a fight broke out, you know, everybody went over the boards and got involved. And I got involved, and I picked on probably the most popular player at that time that was on the Boston Bruins, a guy named Derek Sanderson, who they called the Turk, and I went after him immediately, and we had a pretty good scrap. And I'd have to say in that one I came out on top, and eventually after, when the game was over, the reporters were talking to him and saying they were wondering where this new player came from, this 22, and he says, the guy was like a gorilla coming at me. He says, I didn't even have a chance. And he says, you know, he was like King Kong.
Really?
And that was it from day one, and that name stuck with me.
Derek Sanderson.
In fact, to this day, they call me Kong. Nobody calls me Jerry. They call me Kong.
So what they said, there was a fight and a hockey game broke out?
That's right.
So, well, let's start a little bit. You're born in Sault Ste. Marie, Canada?
Yes. Born there in 1948. It's about 63 years ago. But that's where hockey's hockey. And back then when you were growing up, we probably started playing hockey at the age of 1 skating. And if you didn't skate, you played hockey in the street or in the backyard or in the basement and broke the lights in the basement and the windows and whatever. Hockey was hockey, and it was like to the American kids here in the United States, basketball and football. They grew up doing that, and we grew up playing hockey.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, is there any other sports that you did play? I know you left golf now.
Actually, I was fortunate. I was a very talented athlete, and not because of my dad, probably because of believe it or not, my mother was pretty active in sports and way back. And I did play a lot of baseball, played a lot of softball, fast pitch. I probably played against some of the best teams in the United States. I played against Eddie Feiner, King of his Court.
Really?
I played against the California Cuties, Metro Zurich, and the Silver Six. I'm sure a lot of people have never even heard of these guys, but
well, I can't say that I have, but yeah.
But some guys that most of the guys that would understand what I'm talking about are the ones that played fast pitch, which was a big game in the years in the probably early '60s and late '70s here. I played basketball. I actually had a scholarship, Boston University, when I was playing for the high school team in Sault Ste. Marie. But at that point, I was also playing hockey, which kind of interfered with my basketball. I was working tough to play both at the same time. Most of the time, I showed up at the games for basketball and never practiced, and continuously practiced hockey. My goal was hockey at that time, but the only sport I really didn't play was football, and to this day, I still don't. It's not one of my sports that I like to watch, but I do respect the athletes for what they do out there and how they play it. And I think the main reason is I didn't play it, and I really, to this day, I don't understand it.
Football?
Don't understand it. Don't know the rules. Yeah. I don't get it.
But golf you love?
Golf I love. I play golf. I try to play at least 5-6 times a week.
But that big thing that they say the majority of hockey players are good golfers because of the eye-to-hand coordination?
Eye-hand coordination, and actually there's been a lot of articles about hockey players, why they're such good golfers, and it's mainly because of the hand-eye coordination. And, you know, shooting the puck, swinging the golf club. They even had examples of hockey players playing versus a guy takes a full swing. They say most hockey players take a 3/4 swing, but they hit the ball just as far. and that's a little bit to do with the hand-eye coordination, but the other part is very strong, in forearms and shoulders, and that's why we're such good golfers, I guess. We're not all good golfers.
But you don't want the golfers trying to play hockey, though, right? That's
no, that's one thing about hockey. If you can't skate, you can't play hockey.
Can't skate, can't play. Well, speaking of that, I mean, you said, and I'm glad you brought that up. You said, I mean, at the age of 1, kids are learning just to walk, but they're skating in hockey. What memories do you have of playing before you even played organized hockey, or what was your first organized hockey like? What do they call it, Pee Wee?
Well, first of all, back then, being from Sault Ste. Marie, it's a long time ago. Back 60 years ago, the temperature was probably 20 degrees difference. It was like 20 below zero, and snow. It was like being in the Antarctic, for God's sakes. It was very cold up there, and the big thing then was that, if you had a brother or a couple of brothers like I did, you had a hockey rink in your backyard.
Okay.
So that was the first thing. The snow fell, boom, you're building a rink. So that's where we kind of started, and with the help of my 2 older brothers that used to beat the crap out of me on top of it.
Somebody beat you up?
They did. When I was a little. But when I turned 12, then it was the other way around.
The tables.
But anyways, it's funny that, I mean, you're out there every day. You can't wait to get home from school just to go play hockey just for a couple hours till it gets dark. And at times we even put lights up on our own. But then when organized hockey started, my dad, who was probably my greatest fan, and loved hockey, never skated.
Did he play, or was he
never skated, never owned a pair of skates in his life.
Really? In Canada?
Never. And so when I decided to play organized hockey, you go through the tryouts and everything. How good are you? Which age level? My dad bought me the equipment, and where I lived the closest place for me to catch the bus was about 5 miles. And if I wanted to go play hockey, I had to catch that bus.
To go play organized?
Because my dad was not taking me. He said, if you want to play, there's the road.
Nice.
There's the money for the bus.
Good inspiration.
And then I'd go to the games, and the funny thing about it is we were playing the game, and in those days we played outside. And it was, believe me, it was cold, 20 below zero. We used to wear a couple pairs of socks, maybe sometimes 3, just to keep your feet warm. But the game would start, and we'd look around, and there'd be my dad there watching the game. Stay for the game. Game's over. I come out with my bag over my shoulders, I'm looking around for my dad. He's gone. Back to the bus. Catch the bus, walk 5 miles home with my bag over my shoulders.
Hey, that made you so strong, too. And what was it high school that you played first organized? Or
Actually, it was elementary school. Was first we played, and boy, I got some pictures. It's hard to believe that back then that you played hockey. It's all we had was a pair of gloves. They weren't even hockey gloves; they were mitts with the school sweater, no shin pads, a pair of skates, and you played with like sweatpants on, but no protection at all. And that was way back in elementary school. Of course, when you got into the organized hockey, it was different things. Then you got more equipment, and you looked like a hockey player then.
Yeah. Well, and what was it? I mean, I have written on the Port Huron flags. That was a.
The Port Huron flags. That was the Port Huron, Michigan. That was what they called back then was called the International League. That was one step from. That was between junior, and next level would be professional. So you're in between.
So you're what, about 17 years old at that time?
At that time I was 19.
And then what? Then the Portland Buckaroos?
Well, from there, from the Port Huron Flags, I ended up playing in Chicago's farm team, which was the Dallas Blackhawks back then. And like I said, it was one step below pro. So Dallas was a professional team. I got called up in my last year with Port Huron to go there. Someone had got injured, and they were actually playing for the championship. So I ended up in Dallas carrying the trophy.
Really?
I didn't play a game, but I got to carry the trophy.
And how'd they find you, the scouts?
Oh, they follow you. Yeah, see, when I played junior for St. Catharines, which is the team before Port Huron, I was like 15 years old. That's where you go to play. That is the best hockey you could possibly play at that age.
Oh, you were playing for St. Catharines before those other two teams.
Yes, that's a junior called junior league, which they do have in Chicago now. They have a junior league, but in Canada, the junior level that I went to at the time, that was the best hockey you could possibly play. Actually, on that team, Stan Mikita played there, Bobby Hall.
No kidding.
Yeah, Phil Esposito. All of those guys played on that same team before me. It was a junior team that was actually at that time owned by the Chicago Blackhawks.
Okay. And is there coaches or names that come to mind that inspired you? You know, I mean, I'm sure you got all the hockey becomes your life, but there's a bunch of other things going on, and somebody to say, you know, either stick by it or
one that's, you know, Billy Ray was. Everybody has an opinion about every coach that they have played for. Billy Ray was a great coach, no doubt about it. You know, as far as young players coming up. Billy tended to play the more experienced players and kind of shied away from using a younger player in a key situation or something, or maybe he's playing a certain team you wouldn't play because you were young, didn't have the experience, versus other coaches. I mean, they want you to play and get out there and show them what you got. So it was kind of difficult my first couple of years with the Hawks, but then I got to play and progressed slowly to a level where, you know, I became a regular player, and then when I got to that point, I got traded. Yeah. So
well, it had to be a dream come true. I mean, because you finally attained this goal of becoming an NHL player.
I can't explain it to you. When I got here, I was in Portland, Oregon, playing for the Buckaroos, which was another farm team for the Chicago Blackhawks. And the reason they sent me there was the players there were all ex-NHL players with 10 years experience. It was an older league of older players. They wanted me to go there to groom me, to learn faster, and they figured if I went and played with these guys, I would learn more about hockey faster. So I was there like 1 year, and then the second year, they called me up just before Christmas. And it's a funny thing that happened when we're in the dressing room. I'm leaving. We're playing in actually Colorado. And we had lost. It was a bad night. We lost like 12-2 or something. It was a bad night. I think I was on for 10 goals against or something. It was just a bad night. As I'm walking into the dressing room, the coach calls me off to the side. And I go, oh, boy, here we go. It doesn't look good. And he says, listen, he said, I got some news for you. And I says, what's that, Gord? He says, well, you can't tell anybody. He says, but the Chicago Blackhawks called. They want you in Chicago.
Wow.
And I'm like, wait a minute. Just had my worst game ever in my lifetime, and I'm going to Chicago. And then on top of it, he says, and don't tell anybody?
Yeah.
So I said, whatever you say, Coach, I won't tell anybody. Are you kidding? That door didn't open. I went inside. I said, boys, I'm going to Chicago.
Wow.
So now the bets started flying. They're going, oh, you're going to – back then they had what they call a 3-game tryout. If you went for 3 games and you stayed longer than that, that meant you're staying.
You're staying.
If the 3 games is over, they send you, that means you're going back to where you're going. So they're all been there, oh, you'll be back in 3 games. I looked at them and I said, boys.
And these are all retired players.
Yes. All
wow.
professional.
Wow.
And this is a professional league still. They're still professionals. And they're betting, oh, you'll be back in 3 days. And I said, boys, I'm saying goodbye now because I said, look at this face. You're not going to see it again. And that was it. I left and I never did go back.
That's great.
Went to Chicago and then, of course, like you said, when I got there, it was kind of amazing that I walked down. They were practicing the day I got there. They were already on the ice.
Stadium.
At the stadium, the old stadium. And just to see the old stadium was like, wow, look at this place, you know. And I walked down into the dressing room, and, of course, Lou Varga was the trainer at that time, and he welcomed me to the team. And, of course, he's fitting me with equipment, getting my equipment ready and everything. As I'm trying stuff on, my idol walks in, the Golden Jet. Bobby Hull walks in, and I'm like, wow. And I'm like, I'm sitting there, I don't know whether to go shake his hand, take his picture, or what to do with him, you know.
Wow.
But anyways, I see he comes walking in and he goes, looks around, he sees me there, comes walking across the floor, and he says, "Hi." He says, "I'm Bobby Hull." I says, "I'm Jerry Korab." "Nice to meet you." He grabbed my hand. It was like, I mean, he was just, back then, that's.
And this was somebody you looked up to.
Oh,
I mean, everybody in
I
High.
said, "Bobby Hull, I couldn't even put my stuff on." I'm like, "Bobby Hull, oh my God."
Was this your first trip ever to Chicago?
Yeah.
You had been to Chicago?
Never.
Never even been to the city?
Never.
Wow.
That's another story.
Let's hear it. That's why we're here.
Well, when you get to.
We'll save it for another show.
Well, when I got here, I was happy to get to Chicago to be here, and then just to be able to go after the first game, they took me downtown to Rush Street, and I'm like, oh my God! I said, where have I been all my life?
It was rolling.
Yeah, back then it was. I mean, there's thousands of people on the street, and there's bars, and I mean, anything you could ask for. And like I said, I thought I died and went to heaven. It was a whole new world.
Playing NHL.
Yeah, new life.
In that year, you played 70 through 73. You guys made it to the Stanley Cup Finals.
What's amazing is in the first 3 years 3 years that I played with the Hawks, twice we went to the finals. And the other amazing thing is that we lost both times, which is not good.
Yeah.
It even gets worse, because then from there I end up going to Buffalo, and we go to the finals again. So I was actually in the finals 3 times in my first 5 years.
That's great. And you deserve credit for helping bring those teams there.
But never won.
So along with those guys, I mean, some of the biggest names in hockey: Bobby Hull, Dennis Hull, Keith Magnuson, Tony O, Stan Mikita.
Vince, I think back now, when you're playing, once you're there and for 2 or 3 years you're playing with these guys, you don't really think about the guys you're playing with. Mm-hmm. They're great. You watch them, you practice with them, you eat with them, you drink with them, you do different things with them. And then, as the years went by, now that you're retired, and I see Bobby and I see Stan at the games and Tony, and then you think back and you're going, oh my God, these guys are all in the Hall of Fame. And I had the opportunity to play with these guys. So you think about it more now than, when you played with them. They were great when you played with them. But now you think back and you go, boy, you know what? 1970, when I came to the Hawks, I probably played with some of the greatest hockey players that ever lived.
And they played with you.
And they played with me. But yes, so you think about those things. Every time you watch a game, it brings back memories. It's just great.
Well, you're an icon yourself, man. And,
thank you.
Everybody knows that. So from the Blackhawks, a short stint in Vancouver.
Vancouver, stopped for a coffee.
Just coffee?
It was a coffee break. I actually got traded for Dale Talon, who was their first-round pick for the Vancouver Canucks. And I was there for 3 months. Enjoyed it, but it was kind of far from home for my wife. She was from Melrose Park.
Yeah.
She goes, when I got the news, she says, "Where are you going?" I said, "You don't want to know."
So you were living in Chicago.
I just got married, and I got traded a month before I got married. Bought a house, and that's life and being an athlete. You don't know when you're going to get traded or whatever. But anyways, we ended up there. 3 months was long enough.
For a cup of coffee.
For a cup of coffee, and then I got traded to the Buffalo Sabres. So
where you spent a few years.
I was there a long time.
I know that in one of your interviews, or there was a speech you were making, you're talking about how Buffalo you still consider part of your home, because you were there for a while.
Well, you saw that interview,
yes,
huh?
I did.
I do. I really. That's where I made my career.
Buffalo's a great town. It's like a small Chicago, right?
Great town. A lot of people land there for the first time. They go, "Oh my God, we're in Buffalo." I go, "Are you kidding me?" I says, "Come on." I says, "They have more bars and restaurants per capita than any city in the United States." I says, "You just don't know what part of the city you're going to." Of course, you see downtown, but it's rejuvenated now. It's coming back. I consider it my home because I spent 12 years there, you know, and I had a lot of friends, and I don't think you could get treated much better anywhere else than the fans there. And let me tell you something. They cheered you when you played great, and if you played bad, they sure let you know it.
Yeah, as a true fan should,
But
right?
that's the way it is there. You know, it's a blue-collar town, and, oh, boy, like you said, you saw that interview, and I tell everybody that. I says, I consider Buffalo home. Even though I don't live there, I really do consider it my home.
Put a lot of good years there.
Yep.
And one of the years, I think, is what, 75, they did make it to the Stanley Cup Finals?
75, we went to the finals again. That was the third time in 5 years, and it's hard to believe that in all the three, that was the hardest one to accept. You know, you're getting older, and we should have won.
Okay.
You know, you always hear that you should have won. Well, this was one series that we lost to Philadelphia. We outplayed them every game.
Did you lose in Buffalo or in?
We lost in Buffalo. Yeah, in the sixth game. Yeah, but all the games, there were a lot of games that were in overtime. So sudden death, and it's tough.
What can you tell me about the Summit Series with the Russians?
Well, that was a special game, and Punch Imlach, who was the general manager at that time, came in before the game, and he says, I really don't care if you win another game this year, but I really want to win this one. Yeah. And we were kind of hyped up for it, and any time that you're playing the Russian Army team, you better be prepared, because that morning we watched them practice, and I was like, if I had to practice like those guys, I'd probably quit playing hockey. I mean, the things that they were doing, they were so athletic, so coordinated.
That was their life.
That's
not that it wasn't your life too, but
tremendous. That's what they do every day, and they play soccer and hockey. Soccer and hockey. That's all they do, and work out. If you're a hockey player in Russia, you're a hockey player. You're nothing else. But anyways, we watched them practice, and we're going, wow, we're going to have our hands full tonight. But as it turned out, we were kind of hyped up that night, and the building itself, when they sang the national anthem, the floor was shaking.
Oh, man.
I mean, it was like we couldn't wait for that puck to drop. But when it did drop, I mean, we took control of the game right away. We beat them 12-6. It was the worst defeat in Russian hockey history to this day. So it was a big night, and I have a tape of that game, and I love to watch it.
It had to be great. I mean, it was they said at the height of the Cold War, and
yeah.
And
it was just everything. The national anthem, there was flags going, and it was just like, shivers going through your body. It was unbelievable, great feeling. And
I had to call it a series, but they had already beaten other American teams or Canadian teams, the Rangers.
Oh yes, they have. They did, and we were the first ones to beat them, and we gave them a real bad shellac.
That's what it said.
They actually had two teams over at that time. One was the Red Army, and one was the Soviet team. So we played the Red Army, and they were at that time supposed to be the best team to come out of Russia.
That's great. It said they were so embarrassed the coach kept them secluded for 3 days.
They did.
You ain't going nowhere.
But they were. I'm telling you, it was. They were great hockey players, and we beat them 12-6, and it wasn't an embarrassment. But let me tell you something. You can ask anybody. You can ask my wife, and I told her, I said, you know what? Those probably were some of the best hockey players I ever played against in my life. And to beat them like that was a real feather in our hat, and that's something I'll remember.
Inspiration. And you were called to the All-Star game 75 and 76?
75 and 76, those were our big years. We went to the finals in 75, and we had some really good years. To make an all-star team, it's not an individual thing. It takes a lot of guys helping you, and I just happened to have two really, really outstanding years in those 2 years, and got to play in the all-star team. But I'm going to tell you a true story. You'll love this.
Why, weren't the other ones true?
A true story, but no, when you hear it, you're not going to believe it. And probably anybody who's listening probably won't believe it. They probably don't know about this. Bobby, I'm sure everybody knows who Bobby Orr is. And in 75, when I made my first All-Star team, we played in Montreal. And we go to the game. We go to the dressing room before the game when we get there, and the morning of the pregame skate. And we walk in, and I know I'm playing with Bobby Orr. He's my partner. So we walk in the dressing room together. We're talking about hockey. Da, da, da. We get to the locker, and there's 2 jerseys hanging there. One's number 4, says Orr. The other one's number 5, it says Korab. This is Bobby's, like, probably 9th time he's been in the All-Star game. And my number was 4, too, that I wear with Buffalo.
Oh,
He calls the trainer over. He says, give Mr. Korab 4.
Is that right?
And I'll take 5. Change it.
What an honor.
So that's one of my great stories. And I got my sweater hanging with number 4 on it, my first All-Star game, because of the great Bobby Orr.
Wow. You played along the greats. And that, like I said before, they played along with you. We're running a little bit short on time, but then quickly, then you went to the Kings for a few years?
LA Kings for 3 years. We had some great seasons there. We went to the semifinals against Vancouver, Triple Crown line, Marcel Dion, Taylor, and Zimmer. It was a great place to play. They called us the Country Club Boys. Everywhere we went, we had cowboy boots, jeans, sport jacket, and a turtleneck, and a nice suntan.
Let me ask you, as much as, some things changed, a lot of people that have in the show, things have changed because of computers, this, that, and the other thing, but how has hockey changed and just as much stayed the same, do you think?
Well, the only way it stayed the same is we all skated. After that, I think it's a completely different game now. They took out when they took out the red line, which is the center line in hockey, just opened up the game, and they not only did it to speed the game up, to save time. You can actually go to a game now and almost go a whole period. You'll never hear a whistle for icing the puck. It's faster. It's I don't think it's as aggressive or as tough as it used to be. You can see that because you got some older players still playing.
Yeah.
And the players are just better conditions. They're quicker. I almost said they're smarter, but that's not a very good thing to say. But they are very talented, and equipment. It's a change game. It's
a bigger field too, so to speak. I mean, when you were playing, there was 6 teams.
Yes.
Now there's 24.
32, I think.
Wow.
And the rink went from being a little bandbox, and when they eliminate that red line, it just opened up the whole thing.
Oh, I got to take this. Excuse me for 1 second. Hello. I'm talking to Jerry Korab. Yeah. All right. Okay, bye. I got to take off. I'm sorry I got to leave you, but I got to go. I got an appointment to make. Hey, thanks for being on the show. I forgot to, here's your cannolis. Always give out the cannolis. Will you come back one time? We got a lot to talk about still to catch up. I got to take off. All right. Thanks for being here.
You must be a busy guy.
I'm a busy guy. See you. We'll do it again.
When you're not so busy.